That way we can chazer.
Okay. All right. So just to quickly review what we just said for all those that are not on the shiur, that we're discussing the machlokas, the Balamor and the Rif, whether or not you need to make a motzi when you are paras mapa mekadesh. And the Rif is saying a tremendous kiddush, bringing it closer to the Rabbi Huda that held you have to actually bench and make a motzi. So we don't go as far as benching, but you do have to make a motzi before you go on after your mekadesh. And the Balamor is strongly cholik. We spoke about this last week. That he says the kivi hatter. You go back to the same kviya, so there's no room to make another hamotzi. And the Balamor also predicates on it. He says that we don't find such a thing as making two hamotzis and one berach samazon. So manashach, if you have to make a motzi, then you have to bench before. Before you make kiddush, you need to bench, like the sugya of chaverim, which we haven't gotten to yet. We'll get to in a few weeks. That the chaverim that we're eating are mesubim when they go out. When they leave, if they don't leave mixas chaverim behind, then they need to go out. When they go out to likras chassan, likras kala, or to go daven, they need to bench first and then they go out. And they come back and they make a motzi. And according to the Balamor Shita, when you come back, even if you didn't bench like you're supposed to, you still need to bench and then make a motzi. Because to mekayim the benching for the last meal, and now you're mechuyev a new motzi. We don't find two motzis for one benching. So the Rishonim will ask many kashas on this. We find the mashal, the din of shamish, the Gemara in Chulin, Kutzayan, that a shamish, each prusa of a prusa that he gets, there's hesach hadas, there's a nimlach, because he doesn't know if we get another prusa. So we find that he has to make a new hamotzi in every prusa, but we don't find he makes a berach hamazon every time. So there's one berach hamazon on many hamotzis, which the Balamor is tamua, that how could it be soser a mefurish gemara like that? What do you mean lo mitzino and it's a mefurish gemara that yes? Yeah, we don't say, oh, the Balamor forgot that gemara. That's, you have to know how he's shot in that gemara. Why does the Balamor hold that gemara is different than our sugi over here? It's very tamua. You have to understand that. And the Balamor also, the Yisoda, the Yisoda davar that is called on the Rif is that the kivi hatter, he also go back to the same kviyus. If it's the same kviyus, it's not another suda at all. So then why should he make another hamotzi? So the Balamor is holding there is no hesach hadas over here, but there's just a problem of that you have to make kiddush. So then what's the machlokas, the Rif and the Balamor? So last time we offered a chakira that this isser, the chazal or kaveya, to continue eating before kiddush, even when you're in the middle of the suda. We're medayik from the lashon of the Tur and the Shulchan Aruch that it is an isser because the Tur and the Shulchan Aruch start off this din by saying that if a person, the Shabbos comes in, you're not eating anything. Shabbos comes in and you want to eat something, it's usher to eat until you make kiddush. And then hu adin, the Shulchan Aruch and the Tur say similarly that if you're in the middle of eating already, also then you need to stop and make kiddush until you continue eating. Plus mashma clearly from the Tur and the Shulchan Aruch, the same isser that applies by starting to eat before kiddush will be continue eating before kiddush. So that's the chazal asr according to Shmuel, that we're going in the Mahalach that Shmuel is a new shita. It's not a chumrah, just a chumrah aliba de Rabbi Yossi, although there's no isser at all. And it's just a tosefes chumrah to be mekadosh in the middle. Then clearly there's no isser according to the Rashbam. Rather, according to Tosas, there's another shita, and Tosas compared it to the sugya, like we said last week in Kufhei, which over there Shabbos kavanafsha is creating an isser when Shabbos comes in to eat anything before kiddush, the kviyos of Shabbos. So huadin Tosas learning and these are and the Tur and the Shulchan Aruch is that there's an isser, not just a chumrah or a mila, but it's an isser to eat before making kiddush, even in the middle of a suda. So then we clear the chakira. What's the getter? What's the definition of this isser? What's the mahus of this isser? The chazal that aser to eat before a kiddush in the middle of a suda, did they say that this is like other mitzvahs? You're not allowed to eat when it's time to do that mitzvah. You're not allowed to eat before. It is considered either a gzeira or a zilzul in the mitzvah that you're supposed to be doing. And instead, you stop and you eat. That's a zilzul in the mitzvah. And over here, particularly kiddush, which kiddush in a way is some type of a matir to continue eating. That because Shabbos, the Gemara in Kufhei that says Shabbos kavanafsha creates a matzah that even things that are roy, achilas aroy, that usually you can do. Like I'm allowed, it's time to daven mincha, so I'm still allowed to eat achilas aroy. I can eat a snack before mincha. I can't eat a suda, but I can eat a snack. But Shabbos is different because the Gemara in Kufhei says that just like kashem Shabbos kavas lemaiser, just like by meiser, I'm allowed to pick fruits in the field, vegetables in the field, and not take off meiser if I'm just eating a snack in achilas aroy before it's ruach and abais is brought in. It's just an achilas aroy ba'alma. I'm allowed to eat, but on Shabbos it's usher because Shabbos kavanasha, the cheshivas of the oneg Shabbos is kaveya that everything I eat is chashuv, and there is no achilas aroy on Shabbos, and therefore it has a cheshivas, and I'm chayiv and meiser, and also I'm chayiv to eat. I'm not allowed to eat it before kiddush as well. So that's why I can't compare this to other dinim that I'm allowed to eat an achilas aroy before it's filas mincha or other things, because over here it's always considered like a suda cheshuva, a kavua, because of the oneg Shabbos shabo, because of Shabbos kavanasha. So, but the mahus sof kol sof of the Isra will be that I shouldn't be eating before kiddush. Kiddush is here in front of me to do, and it's some kind of a zilzal or pgia or whatever in kiddush that I'm not doing that instead of eating. Instead of making kiddush, I'm eating instead of making kiddush. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is that once we're not allowed to eat before the kiddush, then Chazal they created over here the Isra Achila in the getter of an Isra Achila mamish. It's like I'm not allowed to eat. It's an Isra this chala and this suda that to be matir the Achila sasuda I need to do kiddush. That's the way they looked at it. So what would be the nafkamina? Nafkamina would be that if I'm creating an Isra Achila on the suda, so then it's possible to say that when I'm matir that suda, then it's like in a certain way, it's like a new suda. There's a certain aspect to it. Although I never left and I know I'm going to continue eating, it's not a total hesach hadas. But sof kol sof, I'm had one suda, that suda became aser. I'm matir that suda through a kiddush. There's room to say now that it's at least the gabi hamotzi, the gabi the din of hesach hadas, the gabi the bracha rishona. Since I had an iser and I wasn't allowed to eat, now it's like a new achila. I need to make a motzi. Mashein can, if the whole iser is only an iser on me, that I'm not mitzad the kiddush, I shouldn't be mezalzel the kiddush, but there was never an isra achila on the etzem suda. So then it's possible to say that it's as far as the suda is concerned, whenever I got what's in the way of me eating, which is the kiddush, when it gets out of the way, then I go back to the same suda, and that would be the lesson of the Balamor, that he says the kive hadar. You're going back to the same kviyus. There was never a hefsek in the etzem kviyus of the suda. Just that I had a side problem. I had a problem over here that I had to take care of to make kiddush. So I was inspired to this chakira from the lesson of the Taz. The Taz, very beautiful Taz in our sugya. In Reish Ayin Aleph, Sifkat and Daled. It's interesting. The Taz is not marach so much to explain the shitas harif. There's two shitas in Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch itself paskins that you need to make a new emotzi, and then it brings yash omrim sh'af shemekadosh al yayin inu mevarach hamotzi. So he brings down the Balamor as a yesh omrim, which the klal in Shulchan Aruch is. It's important to know this. And in Shulchan Aruch, I'm sure you know this, but when the Shulchan Aruch brings down a yesh omrim, the yesh omrim. The first shita he brings down as a yesh omrim, and then the second shita also yesh omrim. So then the klal is that the halacha is like the second shita, but when he brings down the first shita as stam, he doesn't call it yesh omrim. It's just a stam shita, stam sak, and then he brings the yesh omrim. So then the halacha is like the stam, like the first shita. So in this case, the stam is that you do need to make a motzi. So it's paskin like the rif. The yesh omrim like the Balamor, not that way. So the Taz explains the yesh omrim. It's in Sifkat and Daled. The yesh omrim is sfir lahu. Here's where I got to this kakira from the words of the Taz. Yesh omrim is sfir lahu. The gama kiddush lo have a hefsek lachzor levarach hamotzi. The yesh omrim, the Balamor holds that the kiddush is not a hefsek to have to make another emotzi. The kan lo nesar olav ba'achila, because the Balamor holds that the achila was never nesar olav, was never an isra achila. Ela mitzad yesh olav monea mitzad achir. Just you have something preventing you from eating, which is extraneous to the actual achila. The rani alei lasas kiddush. That's achila and the gavra to make kiddush. As long as what's holding you back is then removed, choser the inana harishon, then you go back to the original Indian that we had. chas v'sholom. It's like similar to somebody chas v'sholom. He became mute in the middle of the Suda. Misrapa, takif, then he got better right away. Vada yitzarach lachzor losus amotzi. Don't need a new amotzi. Aken lo have a gemara v'siluk al achila rishona. So therefore, it's not considered a gemara v'siluk. It's not a gemara. It's not a ma'isa gemara or a siluk from the first achila. Ken nearly tam nachon la'ilu hadeos. That's he wants to explain that shita of the Balamor. So Michal Hena Tashemei Alav, that from the way that Taz explains the Yashomim, you see that he's clearly understanding the Rif shita, that the Achila is a Gemar Basilik, that it is an Isra Achila on Etzem Achila. And that's the Nukudas HaMachlokas between the Balamor and the Rif. Whether they
is it a distraction to go into the first shita and explain why the difference between Hamotzi and Kiddush in terms of what you're making Kiddush on? Because I had a little bit of a hard time understanding that, or is that like a little bit not directly Nogea to what we're discussing?
It is quite Nogea. I mean, the Rush explains this, and the Achronim talk about it over here, that the Kiddush, so according to that Sforah, so the question is now, why according to the Rif, do you not have to make a new Brei Pri Hagafen? The Pashtus Rif, the Rif only says make a new Hamotzi, it never says make, so the Shulchan Aruch, we saw the long base Yosef, the Rush, they all discussed this, that question is, if you already made Brei Pri Hagafen during the Suda, the original Suda, now you come to Kiddush, so that's the Shulchan Aruch Paskins with no machlokas. He Paskins Pashut that you do not have to make a new Brei Pri Hagafen if you made one before. So if it's a Hefsek L'Gabe Hamotzi, why is it not a Hefsek L'Gabe Brei Pri Hagafen? So what the Rush, according to the Achronim, is that the Kiddush, the Kuliyama, is not a siluk from the Brei Pri Hagafen. Because just look at every Kiddush. Every Kiddush, you make a Brei Pri Hagafen, and then you make the bracha of Kiddush. So why don't you have to make another Brei Pri Hagafen after the bracha of Kiddush? You just
right. He wasn't like so much saying it's far. He was just saying this is the way it was in Sukkot or something.
Well, it's more than no. They
like, why should it be that way?
What they're saying is for this for is that the Kiddush is part and parcel with the Brei Pri Hagafen. That when you could say that's the way it was Niskan. They said to make Kiddush on a kos yayin. We'll see later on. We get to Kuf Vav, to what extent the chiyuv of yayin is Klape Kiddush. Is that Derabanan? Is that Deraisa? Is that really a chelik of the Etzem Kiddush, or is that something there are mosif for the shivas of Kiddush? That we'll see later. There's a lot of different ways to learn the yayin of Kiddush. But however you learn it, for sure, it's a chelik of that bracha of Kiddush. That the only way you can't just get up and make Kiddush without a kos yayin. You need a kos yayin. Yeah,
but when you said the Hagafen originally, you didn't have in mind Kiddush. Like, how is that related to the Kiddush then?
Even without having in mind, the shal is, do you have a Mises Siluk in any way, shape, or form, or
right?
Hesek Hadas from Shtiyas Yain. So you see it from the fact that every Kiddush has on it Yain before it. So that the Kiddush Batz Muso is never a Siluk or never a Hesek Hadas from Shtiyas Yain. So if you already made a Brei Pri Hagafen, Moshe Feinstein learns from this halacha actually that the whole, it's interesting that the whole din of Brei Pri Hagafen that you make on the when you hold the kos yayin for Kiddush is not a birchas mitzvahs, it's just a birchas nenin on the yayin to fulfill the takana of Chazal to make Kiddush on yayin. So now you have a technical difficulty. You can't drink the wine unless you made a Brei Pri Hagafen to matter the hana. So it remains a birchas nenin, but not birchas mitzvahs. Nafkamina, that if somebody walked in the middle of Kiddush and they missed the Brei Pri Hagafen, and they only heard the brechas of Kiddush, then they're still yotzei, the Kiddush. If they want to drink wine, they have to make a new Brei Pri Hagafen. The Kiddush, they're yotzei, because all they missed was brechas and nenin. They didn't miss a chelik of the brechas and mitzvahs. So
I was just struggling because when he says when the hamotzi is part of the Kiddush, then you don't make a new brechas hamotzi. It's only because it wasn't part of the Kiddush. That's why there was a hefsek. So I didn't understand that. I mean, I accepted it, but I didn't understand it.
So it's very geschmack then that when you make makadosh al pas, which Chazal Misakin, that you can also be makadosh al pas. So even though generally speaking, that's not the way we do it, but when you do, you're going back to Kanas Chazal that your yotzei Kiddush, just like on yain, your yotzei also on pas. Then then the kiddush by definition can't be a hefsek to berachas lapas. So because again you'd have to make hamotzi and then kiddush and then again another hamotzi afterwards. So you see that the way Chazal Masak in this, that this is one of the ways to be yotzei kiddush, that when you do make hamotzi for the sake of the kiddush, then it becomes also a chelik of kiddush. So then so then ad kama, since you're making the kiddush now on pas, so now meneu bay you can't make a motzi on it because it was the fact that you're making kiddush can't be a hefsek to the chilas pas. So that's what will change. That's where even the Rif will agree. That's what the Taz says. Even the Rif will agree. You don't make a motzi in that case, because by using the pas for the kiddush, then you're being koveya that there is no hefsek for kira. There's no you're fulfilling the hemshach hasuda through kiddush on pas. It's
right. I mean, I hear that that's what it has to be, but I don't understand it. I'll let someone else ask.
So like when we do kiddush on a regular Friday night without any mess up in the Suda, when we do kiddush, we generally do bari priya gafen, and then we make the bracha on the kiddush. That kiddush is not a hefsek to my birchas hanenin to drink the yayin. So the same thing here also is what we're saying, that here also it's not going to be a hefsek in my birchas hanenin also for the yayin, but it would be a hefsek for the hamotzi because we're doing like Maisa Kiddush.
Well, the Maisa
Kiddush has nothing to do with hamotzi.
Well, the way that they're saying it is, the way the Taz is saying it is that according to the Rif, in a certain way, the Kiddush that you're making on the yayin, since you are making it on yayin, and then that asers you to eat pas. That Maisa right there asers you to eat pas until you do it. So then that creates a type of basilik, a gemara basilik in the Berachas Hamotzi, not enabling you to continue to eat pas unless you make a new hamotzi. So the Chiddush of the Taz, which is asking over here, it's a fine point. It's a little bit hard to understand. Is that the Taz says that the Rif is moda. If you're making kiddush on pas, then a kiddush like that will then, by definition, can't be a silik with gemara legabi chilas pas, because you're fulfilling the mitzvah of kiddush through pas. So he's asking that okay, if in Kabbalah and a Kabbalah, but it's so it's a little bit hard to understand. I agree, it's a little hard to understand, but
there's an intrinsic difference between the two, because whatever you're going to say by regular Friday night, how could, like, if it's a regular Tuesday and I want to drink my coffee, I say shahakol. I can't now go say some other random bracha in between and then drink my coffee. That would be a hefsek from my bracha to the actual tasting of the food. That would be a hefsek between my bracha and my hana.
Right. However, there might be situations where, let's say you make the same thing would apply by a Bri Priya eights, right?
Right.
But there are times that we make a shechianu. Hello.